All right, here we go. Count us down. 3, 2. Welcome back for another episode of the Fitness Business Podcast. I know you guys are super excited about my guest today because we love talking about branding, of course. It's a big part of everybody's business. And today we have industry expert Lisa Haggis with us today. She is the founder of Realize Your Brand. She also is a business expert. She's a brand strategist. We're just so excited, Lisa, to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait for this.
Good. So I'd love for you just to take maybe 20, 30 seconds and tell everybody out there listening today about Realize Your Brand.
Yeah. So Realize Your Brand is my consultancy agency. And what we do is we work one-on-one with clients who are at a stage where they're ready to level up. We help them get clear on their positioning, their messaging, what it is they want to be known for, and create a brand presence across all the different touch points, from web copy to email sequences to their offerings, that really carve out a place in the world for them to do the work that they are meant to do.
Perfect. Well, we're so glad you're going to share again, like I said, your expert, advice with all of our listeners. And you're going to teach them a lot. I said it last week that even if you think your brand's on point, you're going to walk away with at least one good piece of information today. So let's start right off the bat with you telling everybody out there what your definition of brand is.
Yes. Yes. Brand is a very big idea. And so there's lots of pieces within it. But what I'd like to really, suggest is that your brand is how you give people a reason to choose you. And so it's how people talk about you when they're referring you to somebody else. Like, what is the reason they give for why you are worth talking about or checking out? And so that's the big concept. And it comes from a place of strategy. And I want to make that clear, like right off the bat, because I know that a lot of people think that it's the visuals and, the website and things like that. So my definition of brand is that it starts with the strategy. It starts with those core decisions about who you are. And then it comes to life through things like your website and your visuals.
All right. So moving on to our first question today is, why is building an interesting brand such an important first step before you can even begin marketing?
Yes. Well, because you put so much work into getting in front of people. And it's harder and harder with the noise that you're trying to break through, that when you do finally connect with a potential client and they decide to sign up for your list or, buy one of your products, it is so critical that you actually change their life in the process of interacting with you and experiencing what it is you have to offer. And so if you just have that surface level, flashy marketing, stuff, you might get people in the door, but they won't stay and they won't leave and talk about you. And so you're wasting your marketing dollars if you haven't already built a brand, offerings, and a business that kind of live up to the hype, that are not just all words out there in the world, but you're really making a difference and doing something worth talking about.
Yeah, I like what you said about just trying to break through all the noise. I feel like that it just seems like it is getting harder and harder to build a brand that stands out. Would you agree or disagree with that?
No, it's absolutely harder. Absolutely.
And why do you think that is? Is it just because there's more entrepreneurs in the market? Um,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But it's not only that, it's because people are over saturated. And so it's not even just that there's more people trying to get attention, it's that people are being a lot more discerning about the attention they give, and they're shutting things off, and they're not wanting to get lost in, the sea of information. And so both of those things are happening at once, which means that when you do connect with people, you need to really respect their time and attention. Otherwise, they will never give you their attention again.
That makes complete sense. I follow along, I see it myself just with, perusing all the different social media outlets and everybody trying to grab your attention and make themselves noticed. Why, Lisa, do you believe, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, that it's a person's point of view, not their personality, that sets a company, let's start over. Lisa, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, and hold on, let me try a third time's a charm. Why do you believe, Lisa, that it's a person's point of view and not their personality that sets a company apart?
Yes, I've alluded to this a little bit. A lot of branding advice, and even myself, when I first started off in the field of marketing, like I thought that your brand was your personality and that you needed to kind of hone in on what was unique about you. Are you really outgoing? Are you funny? Are you, powerful? And that you amplify that. And that's how you draw people in and get attention. And that's a lot of what you see out there in branding advice. But the truth is that if you go back to my definition of branding and you think, okay, well, what are people actually sharing when they say, hey, I love this author, he has this crazy idea that I just love, which is this, or, I went to this new gym and they did something I hadn't ever thought of or seen before. Nobody's saying, hey, don't you love the yellow on that logo? Like nobody's saying, that it's about the fact that this brand swears or this brand is, funny, unless that's just a compliment to, how they were feeling that was different in that industry. And so your unique point of view, which is how you see things differently, is going to be the catalyst for you as a business owner to doing things differently, saying things differently, kind of departing from the norm in the industry. And that's what's going to make people talk about you. And if you think of what makes you talk about another brand, you will see that that's true.
Okay, great advice. I really like that. It's a little different message than I've heard before, but I can understand where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on to our next question, and that is, why do you believe branding? Moving on to our next question, why do you believe great branding isn't about gimmicks or catchphrases or even the logo, like you mentioned earlier, but having the courage to just strip away your defenses so you can be honest with yourself and, more importantly, honest with the audience?
Yeah, so there's not a single client that I've worked with who hasn't come to this work with the acknowledgement that they've been hiding. We're, when we start a business, we're putting ourselves out there, and we know that people will connect with us if we are raw and honest and bold and true to who we are. But that's not our conditioning as humans. We like to stay in our safe zone. And so a lot of what people create when they create their brand is kind of like buffer. They're putting stuff out there that if people reject it, they won't actually be personally hurt because it wasn't really them. And we do this subconsciously as we're creating our brand. But what I've seen is branding isn't really a process of creating from scratch. It's finding you as a business owner and seeing all of these ways that you have kind of diluted your message or added a whole bunch of padding to it. And it's all kind of unconsciously with this intention of keeping you safe, because if they're criticizing stuff that's not you, then they're not criticizing you and you can't fail. And so that's my experience, is seeing that it's a journey of getting bolder and bolder and bolder and more honest about who you are. And that sometimes that even takes an external person to help you see the ways that you're not even seeing yourself accurately.
Okay, I'm going to stop for a second. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I really like what you just said there. Is there anybody that you could think of offhand where you could give an example of this, like any past clients? Like, hey, could you maybe right here, maybe insert a quick little story like, hey, because I'd like to say to you, like, hey, great information. Do you have any examples of this? Like,
Yeah.
you could say, hey, well, I had this client and they started off with this, and then we made a few changes and we got them to do this. And I don't know.
Yeah, I have a couple examples. I'm just trying to think of which, what would make the most sense. Yeah, I think, yeah, I have one. I have one.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's pick it
Yeah.
back up. My eye is profusely watering. So if
Do you think two examples, like two quick ones would be better, or just really one?
you can do two quick ones, that's fine.
Okay.
I just don't go like on and on
Yeah.
and on. We'll just we'll put it in there. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's pick it up. Okay. So Lisa, with your experience, I'd love for you to give us maybe an example or two examples exactly what you just talked about, especially with your company. I'm sure you see this all the time.
Yes. Yeah. So one example I love is a client of mine who's a designer. And when I started working with her, she really thought she had to set herself apart, either based on price, or on being the most reliable, because she really couldn't see her own genius. She couldn't see what she had to offer. And so those were her messages, like lower on price, most reliable. And like, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you can kind of start to imagine what kind of clients you would be attracting, if that was how you were positioning yourself. And so when I worked with her, like, I helped really pull out and help her see that she is like an incredibly original thinker. And we shifted her positioning around original design, which she didn't think she had the right to claim because she wasn't seeing herself accurately. And so I love that example because you can see how it would change the course of her entire business. And so, yeah, I feel like that's one of my favorite examples. And you can see that fear is the underlying thing there, because we don't want to claim that we are something and have it challenged. And she didn't want to claim that she was creative and an original designer and have that challenged. So instead, she was claiming things that really meant nothing to her.
You've given such great advice today, Lisa. And just one more piece of advice I'd love for you to share. And that is, how can an entrepreneur, a business owner, somebody that's out on their own trying to make it, how can they discover that they are going in the right direction with their branding? And maybe they think they are, but they're really not. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I love this question because I know that it can feel really stressful. And there's a couple things I'll offer. So first is, your brand is a living, breathing, ever evolving thing. And so you're never going to get it all wrong. There are parts you'll get right. There are parts that could be improved upon. And I just want to put that out there because, it can feel like you have to get it all right and you need to be perfect with it. And I want to definitely say that that is not true. If you want to get to the heart of who you are as a business so that you can put it out in the world as a brand, then you're going to be your first authority on that. And so you might be great at doing that self-reflection and pulling it out. If you're not, and you feel that you need to turn to somebody else to kind of help you see those things, then obviously a brand strategist is going to be amazing, because they're both going to be objective and really skilled at pulling those things out and turning them into amazing messaging and branding. But what I want to say is, like, be careful if you are going to friends and family, because the opinions of people who are not your ideal clients can be very unhelpful and misleading for you as you're trying to land who you are and the messaging that's going to resonate. So I would definitely steer clear of friends and family in terms of, what do you think? Is this good? What do you like? And either stick with a professional or do it yourself, and maybe with like colleagues in your field who understand who your client is and who you are. Those would probably be your best bets to just kind of get that foundation started.
That is some really, really good advice.
Thank you.
Really good advice. I probably, if it was me, I would think that I had the best friend in the world and, would only ask people that I would want to say the same thing back to me, right? We're always looking for people to agree with us. So great advice. And now finally, I'm going to ask you, it's always one of my favorite questions. And that is just, our experts come on and they tell us everything to do right. But I always like to know, like, hey, what do we do if we make a mistake? Or how do we know if we're making a mistake? Or what mistakes maybe have you made? So my question for you is, what are some of the worst branding mistakes you've seen fitness business owners make?
Yeah, well, okay. So for fitness business owners specifically, there are two things that I would really point out. One is what I call defaulting. And so that's when you look around your industry and you see the way that it's done by everybody else, and you assume that that's the way to succeed, so you do it too. And I call it defaulting because you're not even challenging those decisions. You just feel like you're following the model, following the mold, and then you end up in a sea of sameness. Everybody's doing everything the same. So that's number one, is like really question everything instead. Like, what could you be doing that is totally weird and not and unseen in your industry? What could that look like? And then the second, and this one is really kind of comes down to confusing your potential clients or customers, is focusing so much on the tools and the how. So when I work with people kind of in like healing industries, or people who have a lot of certifications, modalities, they've been trained in all kinds of things, I go to their website and I see all of those things that they've been trained in, and I, as the customer, am expected to know whether I need this or that, or this kind of like Reiki, or do I need, and the truth is that is going to overwhelm people, or they're going to pick something really small off your list and say, I'll take this. Whereas if you instead focused on the outcome, the thing that people truly want, and you put all those tools together into a beautiful program that sells that outcome, you're going to be able to put it at a much higher premium in terms of investment. And people are going to have a much easier time saying yes, because they're there for the outcome. They're not there for the tools.
Great advice. My gosh, you're just filled with so many good nuggets. I told the FBP family they're going to walk away with a couple of good chunks of gold here today, and you certainly delivered. So Lisa, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today and just talking about branding with us. Appreciate that.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, I hope to have you back sometime again soon, and you can bring more great information and help all of our FBP family out there that are getting businesses started, or possibly started one and they're maybe in year 2, 3, or 4, or even for our FBP family out there that have been in business for a long time. We could always use a refresher every once in a while. All right. Thanks, Lisa. We did it. Lisa, I would love for you to give us your top 3 tips to developing a standout fitness brand.
Yes. Okay. So tip number 1 is to get opinionated. You need to take a look at your industry and think about what you see that's wrong, what you see that needs to change, and what people are not getting right. And you need to get clear on your point of view and take a stand for what is going to make a bigger difference for your clients. The second tip is then to take that point of view and actually put it into your offerings. Go beyond the default of the way everybody else is putting their offerings together and create incomparable offerings that are based on your unique point of view and that create results that people will want to talk about. And then the third tip is to take a stand for those offerings. And so really stand in your value. Understand that it is service when you want to take a stand for offerings that create real results for people, and do not sell out by selling smaller things that leave people feeling lukewarm and getting mediocre, small little changes in their life that they will not go out and talk about.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. What a pleasure.